today is Hamartia. And I would bet serious money, except for kids like Roman, who already took this class, most of you don't know that word. So it is technically a Greek word, but it's such a popular creative writing technique that we've kind of adopted it. But because it is kind of a weird word, I'm going to make you say it a lot today, because it's just not natural. So it's kind of a bouncy word. It's Hamartia. Try and say it. Hamartia. Hamartia, yeah. So Hamartia is a fatal flaw. And go ahead and show me your screens at this point, except Roman, because he has already done this in the past. Screens. Cash. So we'll say it again. Hamartia. Hamartia. So if I have a character who is flawed, which means they have imperfections, that's a good thing. Because, I don't know about you guys, I actually get annoyed when characters in stories and movies are too perfect, because it doesn't reflect real life. I am very imperfect, and why would I want to read about somebody who's perfect when I am not? And so that's why it's good to have characters, not every single character, but your main characters, if they have a flaw, it's relatable. So say it again, Hamartia. Hamartia. So when we have a character who has a major flaw, it might be where all the conflict in your story comes from. So for example, somebody who's really ambitious, cash screen, somebody's really ambitious, like they're just all about, I'm going to get all that money all day long, and that's all they care about, that might end up giving them major problems. Or somebody who just wants power. I had to learn the hard way as a teacher. If you're just going to try and control every single little thing, you're going to hate your life. You got to give some stuff up. So somebody who is tyrannical, they just want power, that can cause major problems. Somebody who's really stubborn. I had to grow out of that habit. My mom would always yell at me when I was little because if I wanted something, I would freak out until I got that thing. Cash, will you put it away? And hubris is a fancy one. Try and say that. Hubris. So hubris is it's another Greek word, but we've adopted it. It means pride, and it's a pretty common hamartia. Say hamartia again. Hamartia. That you'll see lots of characters who have that classic hamartia. They've got that classic fatal flaw of being too prideful. So there's the story of Achilles, who's from Greek mythology. I'll show you his little story here. But basically, Achilles, the myth goes that his mom wanted to help him be immortal. And so she, according to the legend, if you went down to the underworld, which getting down to Hades was very difficult, but if you made it, if you bathed in the river Styx, which is what guards the underworld, if you bathe in the river Styx, you become immortal. So his mom took that treacherous trek and dipped him in the river Styx as a baby. But she held on by his heel, and that was the only part that didn't get dipped in the river Styx. So the myth goes that was then his hamartia. It led to his eventual downfall, that Achilles was a great warrior known everywhere, but somebody eventually shot an arrow and that got that one lucky shot and it got him right in the heel, which is the only part of him that wasn't immortal, and that was his hamartia. Say it again, hamartia. So that was his eventual downfall, is that one flaw. Yeah.
Why didn't the mom just dip him fully?
Oh no, I totally agree. Exactly. But the story wouldn't have been as interesting, right, without that. So Elsa, if you think about it, she's kind of afraid of her own powers, and that leads to a lot of problems. So that's what I'm saying. Even though hamartia seems like really weird and you would never use it, every human everywhere has seen Frozen. And even something like Frozen, she has a hamartia. Say it again. Hamartia! Hamartia! Yeah.
I feel like 90% of villains' hamartia is that they just talk too much. Like
exactly.
Oh, I've been waiting so long.
Like syndrome? Yes. Or Voldemort, he's just afraid that Harry Potter might take him down. So his fear of Harry is actually what leads to Harry actually taking him down. It says hamartia. These ones are in our video that I'm going to show. So, again, I'm not saying you have to use hamartia in creative writing, but again, it's relatable. If I have a character with a flaw, and that flaw might lead to interesting conflict, it's a good advanced trick to set yourself apart as a cool creative writer. So consider maybe giving your protagonist a hamartia, and like Zach said, Why can't I give my antagonist one too? But I won't go crazy. Like, don't give every single character one. So, let me show you this cool example. So keep your screens facing forward for just a little bit here. And
the story goes something like this. A royal, rich, or righteous individual, who otherwise happens to be a lot like us, makes a mistake that sends his life and the lives of those around him spiraling into ruin. Sound familiar? This is the classic story pattern for Greek tragedy. For thousands of years, we've spun spellbinding tales that fit this pattern, and modern storytellers around the world continue to do so. 3 critical story components, influenced by Aristotle's Poetics, help us understand the allure. First, the tragic hero should be elevated in rank and ability, but also relatable. Perhaps he is a king, or extraordinary in some other way. But because you and I are neither unusually good nor unusually bad, neither is the hero. And he has one particular tragic flaw, or hamartia.
Say it again, hamartia!
Something like ambition, tyranny, stubbornness, or excess pride that causes him to make a critical mistake. And from that mistake comes disaster and downfall.
Go ahead, start thinking about your you try box, everybody, but be careful. Remember, it cannot already be on the chart. You have to give me something different.
An example of these elements in action, let's look to Sophocles' Oedipus Rex, about a man who doesn't know he was adopted and is warned by an oracle that he's destined to murder his father and marry his mother.
Which is obviously super weird, but it's actually a really, really popular story. It's one of the, it's called a classic story. So it's weird, but it has a very famous hamartia.
In trying to escape this fate, he kills a man who won't get out of his way at a crossroad. He then cleverly answers the riddle of the monstrous Sphinx, freeing the kingdom of Thebes from a plague. He marries the widowed queen and becomes king. But after he finds out that the murdered man was his father, and the queen he married is his mother, Oedipus gouges out his eyes and retreats into the wilderness. At the beginning of his story, Oedipus is elevated in ability, and he's elevated in rank. He's neither unusually evil nor saintly. He's relatable. Notice the height of the fall. Once a king, but now homeless and blind. It's more tragic, after all, if a king falls from a tall throne than if a jester falls off his stepstool. Oedipus's tragic flaw is hubris.
And they're not talking about literal falling. It's right? Like it's a metaphor that I was elevated in stature and then something bad happened. Everybody say hubris one more time. Hubris, right? Excessive pride is a very common hamartia. Work on giving me an example in the you try box. Remember, file, make a copy, and turn it on in.
Or excessive pride, and it causes him to attempt to avoid the fate prophesied for him, which is exactly what makes it happen. He's a particularly unlucky soul because his mistake of killing his father and marrying his mother is done in complete ignorance. Of course, these narrative principles transcend classic Greek tragedy. In Shakespeare's canon, we see Hamlet's indecisiveness lead to a series of bad decisions, or perhaps non-decisions, that culminate in the death of almost every character in the play. And Macbeth's ambition catapults him to the top before sending him careening to his grave. Even modern pop culture staples like Game of Thrones and The Dark Knight resonate with the tropes Aristotle identified over 2,000 years ago. So what's the point of all of this suffering?
So it's an old idea, but if it's stuck around for 2,000 years, it probably means it's for a reason, right? That it actually works. Say it one more time. Hamartia. Okay.
According to Aristotle, and many scholars since, a good tragedy can evoke fear and pity in the audience. Fear of falling victim to the same or similar catastrophe, and pity for the height of the hero's downfall.
Relatable.
Ideally, after watching these tragic events unfold, we experience catharsis, a feeling of relief and emotional purification. Not everyone agrees why this happens. It may be that empathizing with the hero allows us to experience and release strong emotions that we keep bottled up. Or maybe it just lets us forget about our own problems for a little while. But regardless of how you feel when you watch Poor Oedipus, never has there been a more salient reminder that no matter how bad things get, at least you didn't kill your father and marry your mother.
Okay, did anybody have a different example of a hamartia that we didn't already talk about? Zach, tell me one.
Monks is OCD.
I love that show. It's one of my all-time favorite. Yeah, this guy has obsessive compulsive disorder really badly, and it leads to all sorts of problems. Good one.
He's like a really good cop.
I love that show so much. Okay, Cecilia. Okay, explain a little bit for people who don't know that one. Yeah, and stubborn is a classic hamartia. So yeah, and it's relatable, right? Because we might be a little stubborn sometimes too. Okay, everybody turn that one in. Let me stop the recording. I'm about to set you loose. So the only thing I wanted to say